let us dive into a massive royal scandal that started with a sealed order inside Buckingham Palace. This directive was so explosive that senior aides reportedly went completely silent the moment they spotted the royal crest on that crimson folder by nightfall. Chaotic whispers were rushing through Kensington Palace that King Charles had made an absolute final decision involving Camilla, Catherine, and one of the royal family's most iconic, symbolic jewels. So when Catherine stepped out the next morning, looking absolutely stunned but keeping her composure, every single royal insider knew they had entered dangerous territory. Before we fully unpack what this means for the throne, hit subscribe so you never miss another dramatic royal update. Multiple reports suggest this massive decision had actually been brewing for months behind closed palace doors, cleverly hidden beneath highly polished public appearances and fake diplomatic smiles. According to close palace sources, King Charles had recently become intensely focused on what aides privately called emergency continuity planning for the crown's long term future, and while the global public stayed focused on standard official engagements and staged ceremonies, a completely different war was brewing deep within Buckingham Palace, a battle not over titles, but over ultimate royal legitimacy. Now watch closely, because absolutely no symbol carried more weight than that legendary diamond choker tied to Queen Camilla's high status. Sources working deep inside the administration claim this specific order was kept under absolute lock and key the second it was signed. High ranking staff were strictly ordered never to mention jewelry inventories, official allocations, or any wardrobe planning under any possible circumstances. Even veteran royal aides admitted the entire atmosphere felt incredibly tense. A top royal reporter hinted that the friction inside Buckingham Palace had gotten too loud to ignore, with secret emergency meetings, filling schedules, and stressed out courtiers rushing through the private hallways with extreme urgency. Something massive had shifted, and top level insiders seemed desperately panicked to bury it before the outside world learned the truth. And then a shocking move occurred that stunned even the most seasoned commentators. Catherine, the Princess of Wales, was suddenly called in for a highly confidential meeting regarding that controversial transfer order. Palace insiders whisper this high stakes meeting carried a heavy emotional weight far beyond simple wardrobe protocols, because according to several hot rumors spreading quickly through wealthy aristocratic circles, this was never just about a diamond choker. It was about power, future succession, and public positioning, quietly molding the royal family's next generation while King Charles battled massive personal health battles and heavy institutional pressures. Making the entire situation far more explosive was the shock rumor that Camilla had absolutely no idea this decision was coming so fast. Reports claimed key members of her circle believed this royal collection would remain untouched for many years, especially considering her loyalty by Charles's side through some of the royal family's absolute darkest, most turbulent modern chapters. But deep level insiders now reveal that the king has started viewing the crown through a much colder, more historical lens, focusing less on personal feelings and more on securing absolute stability for the future reign of William and Catherine. And once that strategic shift took hold behind those closed palace doors, everything started moving with absolutely terrifying speed. By the end of that very week, prominent royal reporters were already heavily hinting at what they openly called an intense internal crown restructuring, while analysts spoke incredibly carefully about historical symbolism, future continuity, and the skyrocketing power of the Prince and Princess of Wales. Yet behind every single carefully written headline was the exact same chilling truth. This was no minor, isolated wardrobe change. It was part of something vastly larger. A quiet power shift happening in real time directly inside the historic House of Windsor itself. And as these wild rumors leaked from Buckingham Palace, straight to Kensington Palace and beyond. The royal family seemed to edge closer to a dangerous breaking point almost nobody saw coming. But the true shock was not the necklace itself. It was what this ruthless transfer represented regarding power, succession, and the ultimate future of the monarchy for decades. That famous diamond choker had sparkled brightly under royal palace chandeliers, but as much more than basic luxury, it stood as a direct symbol of high rank, favor, and closeness to the throne. But according to new whispers, what originally represented royal unity had secretly morphed into the battleground of a brutal inheritance war. And now, with King Charles battling illness and the crown under extreme stress, this massive conflict could no longer stay hidden behind heavy velvet curtains and fake ceremonial smiles. To understand why this quiet transfer shocked the royal household, insiders say we must realize royal jewels are never just ornaments, they are major power signals, and you and I will watch how this unfolds. Let's look at who's actually trusted, who's rising, and who holds the real power behind the royal crown. For years, this sparkling diamond choker stood as a major piece of Camilla's public identity within the royal machine, a glitzy proof that she had survived decades of intense public drama to secure her spot right beside the king. But behind that seemingly permanent image, palace insiders reveal a much quieter, tense question was starting to haunt the entire royal household. Should historic items linked to the future stay with the present queen or start shifting toward Catherine? Sources suggest Queen Elizabeth II's strict old jewelry protocol still cast a massive heavy shadow over decisions about the royal collection, her legendary strategy, according to those who knew palace traditions well, was never reckless, emotional, or driven by vanity. Every single piece had a deep purpose. Every loan sent a message. Every public outing was part of a grander constitutional game. That is why the rumors about transferring the choker grew so incredibly loud. It hinted that Charles was not just cleaning out a jewelry box. He was following a deeper strategy, one built on absolute continuity, duty, and guarding the crown's fragile public image during this shaky historical chapter. For Camilla, this shocking choice apparently cut much deeper than simple royal ceremony. Close sources say she saw that diamond choker as a vital piece of her own permanent legacy, proof that she was fully accepted at last, not just by ordinary people, but by the royal institution itself. So losing that iconic symbol to Catherine would not just feel like sharing the family jewels. It would feel like a direct hit, a brutal, undeniable sign that the next generation was done waiting politely in the background. The future had finally stepped forward, and Catherine's immense popularity made this situation even more explosive. Royal experts constantly point out how she represents perfect grace, absolute discipline, and modern stability, especially during a stressful era marked by endless family drama, public scandals, and immense rising tension. According to palace sources, this intense support for Catherine began shifting power dynamics in ways very few dared to discuss. William was pulled into private debates about family heirlooms, not because he wanted to start a fight, but because the jewels worn by his wife represented the next era. Now pay attention, because here is the detail that pushed the rumors over the edge. Official jewelry experts were spotted entering the palace grounds as talk of this dramatic transition grew louder by the day. To outsiders, it looked totally normal, but within royal circles, such movement definitely carried massive weight. It meant audits, big choices. And once those words started flying around, that necklace was no longer just some old heirloom. It became the ultimate symbol of a future being completely rearranged right before the public's eyes. However, behind all that official glamour was a huge fear of the family splitting into rival camps. Stick with me because this gets crazy. Claim that the very second Camilla heard about this transfer order, The mood inside Clarence's house turned completely icy. Staff started walking on eggshells, meetings were shortened, private schedules were suddenly revised, and according to top royal insiders, the Queen consort quickly realized this was not just about diamonds anymore. This was her actual power slipping away in real time. Reports suggest Camilla's immediate reaction was not a public outburst, but quiet, intense resistance. Those familiar with the vibe inside Clarence House say there was an immediate, desperate push to slow the process down, ask questions, demand clarifications, and maybe even reopen a major choice that King Charles had already placed beyond debate. The talk, insiders say, was extremely polite. Nobody wanted to seem openly rebellious. Nobody wanted a family fight to turn into a full constitutional crisis, but beneath all those sweet smiles, the heavy tension was undeniable. The command hit like a legal verdict, and Camilla's team quickly understood that if this happened without any delay, the meaning would be impossible to change. Secret meetings were set up between Camilla's personal agents and top palace officials, with everyone hiding behind the usual talk of protocol and official timing. But according to deep palace rumors, absolutely everyone in those rooms knew the real game being played. This was a battle over whether Camilla could protect her own status or if the rising court of William and Catherine was already pulling these iconic symbols into its orbit for years. Camilla had enjoyed silent but strong power over official events, social arrangements, and the delicate rhythm of public outings. She knew exactly how the system worked. That is why this move hit hard, and trust me, you and I haven't seen the end of it. All right, you and I are about to witness a high stakes royal drama split between two worlds. On one side stood the old guard. They firmly believed Camilla's position next to King Charles earned her ultimate protection, patience, and respect. Across the aisle stood William's future focused allies, completely determined that this modern shifting monarchy could never drift, hesitate, or look trapped by emotional loyalties, while public trust remained incredibly fragile. Palace insiders leaked that this war was way bigger than a simple personality clash. It had evolved into a cold war over the crown's future direction, a silent, intense test of who would define the next chapter. King Charles was reportedly refusing to change his mind once the decree was signed. That crucial, minor detail mattered immensely. If the king wavered even a tiny bit, it would signal massive weakness to the entire world, suggesting that the palace could easily be manipulated by backroom pressure. Instead, sources close to the unfolding situation say Charles stood absolutely firm, not because it was easy, but because the royal crown demanded absolute clarity. He knows from decades of intense palace scandal that hesitation hurts a ruler's reputation far more than outright cruelty. Through this entire mess, Catherine stayed completely silent, turning that silence into her own powerful weapon. While rumors, now here is where you and I need to watch closely. While the global press went wild, Catherine kept the perfect, calculated composure that she is famous for. This utter silence deeply unsettled Camilla's closest allies even more because they had nothing to fight. No angry statement, no victory lap, no obvious drama, just a chilling vibe that the future was moving forward without her. While this Cold War raged in the shadows, Prince William was quietly planning a massive power move of his own. Forget the simple jewelry dispute. The real bombshell here was the timing of this entire transition, because according to astute palace sources, this order landed right as William and Catherine were quietly taking control of the family and grabbing massive influence behind closed doors. Now, insiders say the diamond choker was actually the first major sign of a huge crown takeover happening in secret for years. Prince William had been quietly training for his future throne in the shadows, but reports suggest those slow training days are officially over now. Things have suddenly turned direct. highly organized, and incredibly aggressive behind the scenes. Senior palace staff are now bypassing the king's team to deal directly with William on major, pressing affairs. Let us pause here. This is exactly where the balance of power shifted away from the aging king himself. William is no longer just the heir waiting in line. He is now the ultimate savior the crown needs, especially with Charles facing severe health battles, while the public demands real stability during this crazy era. Right beside him, Catherine's influence is officially reaching a massive, historic new peak. Insiders reveal she is not just a pretty face or the sweet Princess of Wales anymore. She is being prepped as the true backbone of the entire future monarchy. Her legendary composure and total refusal to engage in messy royal drama give her a quiet power that speaks absolute volumes. Palace staff are even starting to call her the next sovereign anchor. That heavy title shows exactly how much power she holds inside the royal system. She is becoming the face of the crown before she even wears the crown, and that is why the diamond choker was such a big deal. Normally, a jewelry handover is just routine wardrobe schedule planning, fashion choices, or timing. But this was different. Sources say the move was labeled as continuity planning. That sounds like boring corporate speak, but it carries the massive weight of hardcore royal strategy. It means the palace is looking past Charles and planning for tomorrow. As they prepare, every single symbol around Catherine is being carefully upgraded and aligned with her future role. Royal experts are comparing this tense setup to the rise of Queen Elizabeth II, when every single jewel and public appearance built a young queen's authority before her historic reign even officially started. Now, decades later, that exact same groundwork is forming around William and Catherine. Not because the king has suddenly disappeared from the picture, but because the palace has finally accepted a brutal truth. This transition of power cannot wait any longer. Charles is reportedly relying on William so heavily that the old palace system is totally broken down, and that is where we leave it. A quiet coup, rewriting the future of the crown. All right, you and I are about to watch private loyalties clash with public trust as William's royal influence grows. Camilla's inner circle reportedly watched this shift with rising panic, realizing the famous choker was no longer just a simple jewel. It was a major sign that the power center of the monarchy was shifting. Then came the ultimate turning point. Insiders claim this changed everything: the activation of what courtiers reportedly called the Crown Continuity Protocol. This final secret order reportedly swept through Buckingham Palace with surgical precision. Security clearances instantly shifted, and jewelry vault logs were allegedly updated. Private archivists quietly entered restricted royal chambers. Whispers started leaking straight from the palace administration. The legendary diamond choker was silently stripped from Camilla's personal collection before senior aides even knew. The most chilling part, according to royal insiders, was how incredibly calm everything appeared from the outside. There was no massive announcement, no face to face public drama, and absolutely no official royal statement explaining it. Now pay attention here, because this is where the massive machinery of the palace silently began to move. Inventory systems were updated. Ceremonial advisors were briefed in secret, telling people only what they absolutely needed to know. Those left outside the loop only figured it out through sudden delays, long silences, and a very obvious absence. It was a masterclass in bureaucratic warfare, a silent art the monarchy has perfected over hundreds of years. It was quiet, precise, and completely impossible to stop once done. Crown archivists reportedly led the whole charge. This made the transfer feel like a standard institutional rule, not a personal attack. That difference meant everything. If the jewel had been a personal gift, they could have easily fought back. If it was treated as a simple private gesture, Camilla could have resisted, but framing it as royal property changed everything. By calling it royal inventory and future continuity, they turned a personal feud into official protocol. And let's pause here. You and I know protocol inside the House of Windsor is colder than raw anger. It simply moves forward. Camilla's closest allies were completely stunned by the sheer speed of it. They assumed there would be time to negotiate, soften the blow, or delay it until the public looked away. But by the time whispers reached the rest of the royal family, the damage was already done. The biggest changes were locked in. The choker was no longer considered a part of Camilla's official public look. Instead, it entered a whole new category, forever linked to Catherine and the future face of the monarchy. For Camilla's team, this major shift felt like a massive slap in the face disguised as paperwork. As expected, Buckingham Palace stayed completely silent about who gets to wear which royal jewels. That deep silence only fueled the fire. Royal experts began analyzing every single look and public appearance. They openly wondered if this was the start of a massive power shift. If one jewel could go, what next? Which famous tiaras, necklaces, and historical brooches would eventually be handed over to Catherine down the line? The wild theories grew out of control because the palace refused to release any statement denying the rumors. Through all the media chaos, William and Catherine showed ultimate poker faces, no bragging, no excuses. Their silence made the move feel even more brutal, proving they knew exactly how powerful this statement was. Meanwhile, insiders say King Charles was totally drained. He was a leader caught in a terrible spot. A king forced to choose between keeping his wife happy or protecting the long term future of his kingdom. Once again, the crown demanded painful sacrifices. But while the palace tried to stay calm, the public erupted. This threatened to turn a family spat into a worldwide crisis for the monarchy within just a few hours. As soon as the gossip leaked, the internet erupted into absolute, unhinged chaos. Historians studied old photos, debating whether this was standard royal procedure. Was this just regular rules or an active punishment? Behind closed doors, staff feared a massive disaster. The royal family was heading toward their most toxic, dramatic showdown since the late Queen passed away. The drama escalated instantly because royal symbols always carry massive historical weight. What started as a quiet closet cleanup suddenly turned into an intense national debate about loyalty. Catherine's fans saw this as a massive win. Proof the crown is officially preparing her for queen. And that's where we leave it. You and I know this choker is way more than just a simple diamond necklace. You and I are watching a legendary royal treasure move between high figures handed directly to the woman carrying the emotional stability of the future crown. Once that explosive theory spread, the palace couldn't just brush it off as some simple private administrative detail, but critics saw a far harsher, more deliberate reality. And they questioned if Camilla was being deliberately sidelined and slowly pushed away from the center of ceremonial power. While William and Catherine gained massive ground, some commentators even framed it as a cold act of palace discipline, the kind of quiet, strategic royal punishment that lands without an announcement and leaves absolutely no fingerprints behind. Others argued it was simple protocol, a natural shift for a family preparing for generational change. Yet this heated debate exposed a much deeper, more painful wound. The monarchy cannot move one historic jewel without the entire world asking who is rising, who is fading, and who still actually matters. Jury experts added serious fuel by dissecting the choker's dramatic history, its appearances, its hidden meaning, and the power of royal adornment. They reminded the public that in the House of Windsor, jewels are never neutral, they are active public language. A brooch can honor a memory, a tiara can confirm high rank, a necklace can announce trust before a single official statement is ever made. Now pay attention here, because this reported transfer allowed people to read a private palace decision as a coded royal warning and every single possible interpretation pointed directly toward tension. Tabloids instantly seized on the phrase Royal Cold War, turning quiet whispers into massive headlines and speculation into drama. Buckingham Palace allegedly ramped up their media damage control, careful not to deny too much or confirm anything that would make the story explode further. But silence once again became their shield and weapon. The less they said, the more the public believed something truly serious had happened. Behind that silence, insiders claim King Charles was deeply distressed by how fast the crisis had spiraled out of his control. For the king, this pain was personal. He had not just signed an administrative order, he had triggered a brutal public reckoning over his wife's status and his son's future. The monarchy survives through powerful symbols. But those very symbols can also expose hidden fractures. In this case, that diamond choker did exactly that, turning a supposed act of family continuity into a question of absolute power. Yet the most devastating reality for the palace was still to come. Because insiders claim this was only the beginning of a far larger restructuring of royal power. By the time Catherine reportedly appeared wearing that choker during a private royal event, you and I both know an invisible line had finally been crossed. The heavy symbolism was impossible to ignore. This was no longer just about ceremonial jewels, but about the future sovereign structure of the monarchy itself, and who would actually define it in the highly uncertain years ahead. According to palace whispers, the restricted event was never meant to become the epicenter of a massive royal storm. It was supposed to pass quietly, shielded by discretion, protected by the usual silence of elite aristocratic circles. But symbolism inside the monarchy has a way of escaping confinement. The second Catherine was allegedly associated with the choker. The meaning became far larger than the room itself. Insiders interpreted it as a major declaration of succession stability, a clear sign that the future was not just being discussed in private files and secret meetings, but quietly displayed through the oldest language the crown understands: legacy. For William's inner circle, the message was simple but unforgiving: duty over personal alliances. The monarchy, they firmly believed, could not afford confusion at the center. It could not look emotionally divided while the public was looking for strength, discipline, and continuity. Catherine's role had grown precisely because she represented absolute steadiness in a period of uncertainty, and the reported transfer of this powerful jewel only deepened the heavy feeling that the palace was preparing the nation for a new emotional order, not loud, not openly declared, but unmistakably advancing. Camilla, meanwhile, was increasingly described by some palace insiders as politically isolated within certain royal circles. That did not mean she had lost all influence, but it suggested her authority was no longer moving completely uncontested through the institution. The old network still existed, and the loyal voices remained, but the center of gravity had shifted toward William and Catherine. Once that shift became visible, even in quiet whispers, it could not easily be reversed. For Camilla's supporters, this was the painful part. They were not watching a sudden fall, but rather a gradual narrowing of her space. References to Queen Elizabeth II's long-term succession philosophy began surfacing again in royal conversations. The late Queen understood that the crown survives by preparing before crisis arrives. It moves slowly, but when it moves, we must watch. All right, you and I are jumping straight into this ruthless move. Whispers say Charles reached the exact same conclusion. Keeping the royal image alive mattered far more than keeping family members happy, and if that meant letting Catherine take over not just future royal duties, but active symbols of power right now, then the harsh decision was set in stone. By then, everyone behind palace walls realized William and Catherine had officially become the royal family's undisputed power center. Charles was still king, but the future was rapidly locking onto his heir, and beloved daughter-in-law at absolute lightning speed. That diamond choker became the ultimate loud statement everyone understood, even if nobody inside those ancient palace walls actually dared to say it out loud. As the drama settled over Buckingham Palace, one chilling truth was simply impossible to ignore. Down the line, royal experts might view this whole diamond choker handover not as a simple family feud, but as a brutal move for the crown's survival. Sources close to the palace inner circle reveal that, pay attention here, King Charles faced an incredibly heartbreaking choice between his wife and the survival of his crown. Deep inside the quiet halls of Buckingham Palace, the crown made its brutal choice. Insiders say Charles fully felt the intense sting of what this call actually meant. Handing such a massive heirloom over to Catherine was not just honoring the future queen, it completely exposed the harsh limits of Camilla's current power. It forced the firm to confess what many royal sources had suspected for months, that the family simply could not tolerate any weakness at its very core. Personal love was important, but it could never beat the crown. Private devotion mattered, but it absolutely could never override what the public demanded. And so deep palace whispers claim Charles chose cold survival, even knowing that this decision came with massive emotional scars. The crown has always survived on heavy symbolism: rings, brooches, chokers, royal seals, and grand titles all hold weight far beyond their actual gold and gems. They show the public exactly where true power is starting to pool. They reveal who is being elevated, who is being shielded, and who is quietly being pushed away. That is why that diamond choker carried such insane weight. It was not just precious because of its rare gems, it was mind blowing because of the dead silence surrounding it. You and I can clearly see the handwriting on the wall with this transfer. For Catherine, this massive handoff essentially confirmed what many royal watchers had suspected for months. She was no longer just the beloved, smiling Princess of Wales. She was stepping up as the absolute, undisputed face of the monarchy, the anchor around whom order, discipline, and the royal succession were now being tightly built. Every single step she took carried massive weight. Every quiet moment felt completely planned. Every royal heirloom given to her seemed to push the crown directly toward the next generation. Camilla, meanwhile, was left to manage a much smaller and decidedly colder circle of power. She was still queen consort, but sources insist the true energy of the palace had. William was rising fast as King Charles faced growing health issues, and the royal firm seemed completely laser focused on preparing for the next reign. The old dynamic had not crashed down suddenly, but it had definitely shifted. And once royal momentum starts moving, it almost never reverses. So that diamond choker was far more than some expensive jewelry. It served as a warning, a sharp message, and a passing of the torch. It showed that the crown only lives on by ignoring personal pride and putting the family survival ahead of any single royal. That is the cold, hard reality of this family. It looks incredibly elegant on the news, but behind the scenes is a machine fueled by constant sacrifice, rigid duty, and decisions that leave deep scars. Because within the House of Windsor, diamonds might shine under bright spotlights, but you and I know true power belongs to the one chosen to lead them into tomorrow. Thanks for watching. Make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and we will catch you in the next video.